Hello, and welcome to a special episode of Sacred Space with Sonia. This is a solo episode. It's just going to be me sharing some reflections and thoughts after a 4-day retreat with the incredible and incomparable Eckhart Tolle. He's been one of my greatest spiritual teachers, probably since I was a teenager after I read his book, The New Earth or A New Earth, Awakening to Life's Purpose. I first read this book when I was pretty young. I guess I would have been in my late teens or early 20s. And I think a lot of it was lost on me at that time because I think I just didn't have the awareness, the presence, the life experience to fully understand what he was talking about. When I saw that he was doing a retreat, basically in my backyard in Whistler, I jumped at the opportunity. This year, I also celebrated a milestone birthday. So it was my birthday wish to do this retreat, not only just with myself, but also to invite my mother and my sister. And honestly, it was such a beautiful experience. And I didn't really know what I was going to get from it. I really went into it with no expectations. I just wanted to be present. I just wanted to hear Eckhart Tolle speak. I wanted to be in the same room with him, and I wanted to experience his state of presence. And I have to tell you, I was completely moved. For those that aren't that familiar with some of his teachings, I want to read a passage from his book, The New Earth, to kind of bring you up to speed on where my head was at and why a lot of people joined in on this retreat. So he writes, a significant portion of the Earth's population will soon recognize, if they haven't already done so, that humanity is now faced with a stark choice: evolve or die. A still relatively small but rapidly growing percentage of humanity is already experiencing within themselves the breakup of the old egoic mind patterns and the emergence of a new dimension of consciousness. What is arising now is a new belief system, a new religion, spiritual ideology, or mythology. We are coming to the end not only of mythologies, but also ideologies and belief systems. The change goes deeper than the content of your mind, deeper than your thoughts. In fact, at the heart of the new consciousness lies the transcendence of thought, the newfound ability of rising above thought, of realizing a dimension within yourself that is infinitely more vast than you thought. You then no longer derive your identity, your sense of who you are, from your incessant stream of thinking that in the old consciousness you take to be yourself. What a liberation to realize that that voice in my head is not who I am. Who am I then? The one who sees that, the awareness that is prior to thought, the space in which the thought or the emotion or sense perception happens. Ego is no more than this identification with form, which primarily means thought forms. If evil has any reality, and it has a relative, not an absolute reality, this is also its definition: complete identification with form, physical forms, thought forms, emotional forms. The results in a total unawareness of my kidney. This results in a total unawareness of my connectedness with the whole, my intrinsic oneness with every other, as well as with the source. This forgetfulness is original sin, suffering, delusion. When this delusion of utter separateness underlies and governs whatever I think, say, and do, what kind of world do I create? To find the answer to this, observe how humans relate to each other, read a history book, or watch the news on television tonight. Isn't that funny? So I wanted to read that just to kind of bring you up to speed on why people were drawn to this retreat. So It was a 4-day retreat in Whistler. And really, the purpose of it, as Eckhart began, was to deepen our sense of presence. So what he did was really quite unique. I've never seen anybody do this before. He walked out onto a stage full of, with a room full of 800 people. We all stood up, we clapped for him, and he sat quietly. And he looked around the room. And I could see and feel the presence that he was bringing. He told us later at the end of the retreat that the reason why he does that is because he really is not thinking. He is thoughtless in that moment, but he's allowing his presence to move through him. That was profound in and of itself to watch him in that state. And it was a huge, huge lesson for me. How often are we actually present in this moment, here, now? When you realize how we go through so much of our life without really being there, either we're thinking of something that just happened, or we're thinking of something that is about to happen or could happen, or we're thinking about our future. We're never really in the moment. We're not really being fully present. So that's basically what this retreat was about. And with it, he shared many, many lessons. I'm going to read for you some of my notes. This is the actual notebook that I had with me on the retreat. And I wrote down what really resonated with me and what I took away. And so when we were sitting in silence, like 800 other people, we were sitting and listening to beautiful music, waiting for him to come out. And when he did come out, his presence was soft, so full of light, and so very present. The way he chooses his words, the pace at which he speaks, is meditative in and of itself. And I share this with you not to idolize him, but to look at him as an example of what we can all be if we choose to do so. I was sitting in the second row with a clear view of Eckhart as he sat in a simple white chair and spoke from the heart, from true presence. The feeling was, it was like a true connection, like you were building with somebody. I was moved by his simplicity and really warmed by his humor. He has a great sense of humor. He's very funny. Now, most of what we discussed was that egoic mind, that state of mind that so much of the world is living in, wanting more, needing more, needing more money, needing more control, needing more followers, needing more likes. All of this, all of it feeds the egoic mind, and it takes us out of our state of presence. So Eckhart used an incredible visual to help all of us understand the two states of living. There is the doing state, the horizontal axis, and then there is the being state, the vertical axis. That is the one that connects us to source, that connects us with presence, that connects us with oneness. And then there is the doing, the the horizontal axis, which is where the egoic mind lives. It's where most of us live most of the time. It's, going to work, getting the things done, writing that book, doing that podcast. It's the doing, the busyness, the here to there. But when we can find a way through presence to merge the being and the doing, that is when we are in presence. Think about that. How often are we actually present? I wanted to do this episode without any script. I wanted to just let the consciousness flow through me as Eckhart embodied for us so beautifully over the 4 days in Whistler. He told us that many of us have reached a point where suffering has served its purpose. He also asked us this question: how would I experience this situation if I didn't add a thought to it? Ooh, this one is profound for me. So think about this. Okay, so what's a situation? A situation could be my car gets stolen. So say you go outside and you're like, my car's not there. So the egoic mind will want to say, attach a thought to it. Oh my gosh, this is awful. Somebody stole my car. Car's not here. What am I going to do? And it might bring up this sense of panic, this uh, anger, a whole lot of other feelings. But when you take away the thought and you just experience the moment, what are you actually experiencing? You're experiencing, I guess, the realization that your vehicle's not there. Could be an inconvenience. Could be a misunderstanding. You don't know. So just think about that. I mean, you could use that example for so many situations. Maybe there's something that happened to you in your day that just pissed you off. It's your egoic mind taking over that situation, tainting it with thought. Eckhart says this moment, any moment, the moment that you're in right now, the moment is as it is when you don't add a thought to it. I understand now why he always has that one look on his face. It's like this. It's like wonder. He's just sitting in a wonder all the time. He also shared that waiting can be simple acts like waiting in line for something. Say you are waiting in line for your morning coffee and it's taking forever. Well, waiting in and of itself can become a spiritual practice. So he talks about it in steps. One, you're waiting for that thing to happen. Secondly, a narrative begins to form in your head. Maybe a feeling that's attached to it. You're feeling let down. Maybe you're feeling irritated. Then that narrative actually makes you feel unhappy. It has a heaviness to it. The narrative, what that narrative does is it amplifies your ego. What is the narrative that's in your mind right now? Something happened in your day. What thought did you attach to it? So what Eckhart says is the solution to this is recognizing the narrative as a narrative and understanding that we actively choose our suffering. So if we actively choose our suffering, we can actually choose not to suffer. And the suffering comes from the egoic mind. It comes from the thoughts that we attach to our situations, which then maybe erupt certain emotions inside of us. But that beautiful state of self-stillness, where the vertical and the horizontal meet, that's where we're trying to get. I love that visual. And he also shared that that's what he believes, or, the great thing about all of his teachings is that he takes from so many different schools of thought, from philosophy, from religion, from psychology. So you have a really well-rounded perspective and really messages that have come from different parts of the world through different times, but really saying the same thing. The oneness in all of this. That's the message I resonated with so deeply. He says, look closely and you will find the thing that is causing you suffering is not the situation. It is your thought of the situation. The challenges of our life will push us into presence. And you are never more fully yourself than when you are still. All right, he had a really, really great example that I want to share with you. And he talked about animals, dogs, pets, cats, whatever pet you might have. Maybe some of you are pet owners. But the reason I think what he shared is that so many people have that connection with animals is because animals are consciousness unburdened by the egoic state. So he says with animals, you are actually connecting directly with their consciousness, the consciousness of a dog, of the cat. There is no egoic state in them. There's just presence. And he says that that shared sense of being can be recognized in humans as well. And that, my friends, that is the feeling of oneness. He goes on to say that the recognition of being in another is the rising of love. That love is truly the recognition of non-separateness. I love that. I love that so much. It's beautiful. It reminds me of something I shared on social media recently. And, a lot of people jumped into the comments and were quick to point out, certain regional differences between people. But really what ended up happening was a separation, a division. Instead of, I shared a post celebrating someone and for their accomplishments. I ended up down this rabbit hole where the comments became kind of negative. And I realized that it's people's egoic mind that takes over and steps in and wants to sow division. But in our true natural state, oneness is actually where we're most comfortable. It's where we naturally are. And getting to that point is not even an act of doing. It's actually more of an act of remembering, of getting out of the way of yourself and allowing just that presence to flow through. Eckhart talked a lot about nature, about taking time out in nature to simply be present. He says, be alert in your senses and in your sense perception, but don't label it. Know it in a deeper way. Let it flow through you. Just experience it. He said that when you look at something like a flower, it's that beauty that you see in it. When you see something that is awe-inspiring, and you think, oh, wow, that's so beautiful. That beauty is something beyond the physical form that is actually shining through. And that's the beauty of nature, is that we can see that beyond the physical form. So like you, I myself spend most of my day in the thinking mind. Of course, it's where we've been conditioned to be. It's the way most of the world lives right now. And of course, we need it for practical purposes as well. But what Eckhart says is that you actually reclaim consciousness from the thinking mind. So at some point, you realize that you are not your thoughts, that your consciousness is not actually in the thoughts. It's a thing recognizing the thoughts. Every so often I have to pause and just let it sink in. I hope you're doing that as well. Ooh, okay. This was probably my biggest takeaway. So Eckhart Tolle, one of the great spiritual teachers of our time, says that if you only have one spiritual practice that you're going to try, that you're going to give a chance to, perhaps the best one would be conscious breathing. Why? Because there is nothing more present than your breath. It forces you into presence. And you get reminded that you are consciousness experiencing itself as a person. So how do you use this? All this knowledge, all these teachings, how do you use it in a practical sense? Well, Eckhart says that when you are totally unconscious, you're acting out your mood. So if you are somewhat conscious, you might be aware of that mood. You might say something like, today, I'm in a bad mood. There's a recognition, a separation between the consciousness and the mood, but also a recognition that that mood has taken over. So Eckhart shares that when we are emotionally triggered, be aware of the thought. Just notice it for a moment. Be aware of the emotion that it draws up. Just notice it. And he says that's all you need to do. Just notice the feeling. And after you notice it and take a moment to give it its time, it will normally dissipate because it won't feed more thinking. So if something sets you off in your day, notice it. Notice that feeling. What is it? Maybe you're angry. Sit with that anger. Feel it. Allow it. Say hello, anger. And then say goodbye to it. Might take a few minutes. Might take some deep breaths. But it is possible to let it go. So when that emotion arises internally, he says, allow it. Don't stop it. Allow it. But be the witnessing presence of that emotion. Because the unobserved mind is the unconscious state. The name of this retreat was Awakening to Peace in Challenging Times. As a news anchor, as a journalist, I know we're in challenging times. It's probably why it's brought me deeper to spirituality, to my own presence, into a need and a desire to expand my own consciousness, because I can see that what we're doing is not sustainable as a human species. And Eckhart drives it down to this one point. He says, all the problems in humanity are due to the inability for us to just sit quietly in a room. When was the last time you actually just sat and tried not to think, didn't think, let those thoughts come in and go out and just sit? He says the point isn't to be asleep. It's not to shove the thoughts away. It's to rise above the thinking, to be in a state of being where you let go of that mental noise. He believes the troubles of humanity are created by the disconnection to the spiritual realm, and that the being and the doing, the vertical and the horizontal, they need to merge. So be aware of yourself as a consciousness that is experiencing this moment. I've always considered myself to be a person of faith, but non-denominational faith. And Eckhart reinforced my belief in faith. I believe, I have a strong sense of belief. And he shared that faith means that what you're doing is you're actually connecting or accessing to universal power, that universal power of source. I thought that was just beautiful. The final day of the retreat was spent talking a lot about the spiritual ego that arises in many, and the suffering that lies in clinging to anything that is impermanent. He used a term from ancient philosophers called memento mori, meaning remembering, the state of remembering that you will die, remembering that you will die. And what it does is that deflates the ego when you remember that you will die, that you are impermanent, that everything is impermanent. So if you don't deny the impermanence, it deepens you. It awakens the depthless dimension in you, and it connects you back to that source of energy, to eternal life. Imagine a world where all of our leaders disconnected themselves from their ego. If they were living in presence, what would our world look like? Eckhart says that real goodness is beyond the ego and does not compare. There is a worthiness that cannot be touched. Goodness arises from a deeper place that is not comparative. If you find yourself comparing yourself to others, that's the ego of mind stepping in again. You are a perfect expression as you are. You are enough. You don't need to come here. So one thing I also learned is that everybody needs a form identity. So my form identity, I'm Sonia. Um, I have a family, I have children, I'm a mother. These are all the form identities that I attach to myself. But he says that it becomes the ego when you own and completely identify with your form ego. So which are you? Are you the one on the horizontal plane or the vertical plane? I like to think about that a lot. So in that moment, when you become aware of your form identity, of your personality, you actually disconnect from the ego. It's kind of like the awareness about the awareness of who you are. If that's the actual you, that's the one he's talking about. When you only identify with the ego, you are essentially spiritually asleep. And recognition of yourself and others is love. It is oneness. He says to avoid the ego, avoid coming to a conclusion of who and what you are. Stay open. Kind of see it like it's like a sieve or like a flour sifter. Just eat the sift. Things come in and things come out. You let it flow through. There's no heaviness. There's no stickiness attached to it. He had a lot of advice also for people who might call themselves spiritual teachers. And he said that when you realize you are helping others as a spiritual teacher, be careful not to fall into that identity of being a spiritual teacher, because that in and of itself can create that sense of superiority. Remember, we're all on this physical plane we're all on the same physical plane. We are all in the same oneness. We are all fragments of the same source energy. So to put yourself on a pedestal is to deny your oneness. He says being a spiritual teacher is a function. It is not your identity. I love, love, love that one. The teaching cannot come through if you regard yourself as a spiritual teacher. Be careful not to get trapped in this conceptual identity. Let it flow. Get out of the way. Rise above thinking. He says it makes life a whole lot easier if you don't carry the burden of conceptual identity. So watch out for that spiritual ego. Watch out for those thoughts that tell you know better than everyone else. We are all on our own journey. He says your identity needs to arrive from a deeper place. The deep I, the stillness that is sitting behind all of the noise. Just as a virus can infect others, presence can be transmitted to others in that same way. So try it. Maybe next time you're in a room, you're in a conversation, be boldly present. He says that presence doesn't come out of intention. You are allowing the presence to flow through you. You aren't doing it. You are transmitting it through you. You're not doing, you're being. Doing, being. The horizontal and the vertical. I am here right now as a presence. I am here right now speaking to my higher self. Part of the reason why I wanted to go into this podcast taping with I would say a bit of a plan, but not really a plan. I just wanted to let my words flow from me is because of what Eckhart said. And in this one, oh, this is so true. He says, not knowing what to say puts you in touch with a deeper level of yourself. Accept that you don't always know. Trust and let go. You don't always have to know. You don't always have to have thought. You don't always have to speak. You can listen. You can sit in present awareness. I think our world would be profoundly better place if more and more of us practice this. I can see this from Eckhart's teachings and just his very being, but becoming comfortable in the state of not knowing is very powerful in and of itself. You're not trying to do anything. You are just being. He shared that Socrates wrote, "I am the only one who knows he knows nothing." Kind of that idea that the further that you go, not the further, because I think that in and of itself goes back into the egoic mind. But as you continue on your journey, you realize that you are in a dream life, and it starts to get more pleasant when you are present. For many, something needs to go wrong in their life for consciousness to expand. That moment when you can step outside of your thinking mind and see it from a different perspective. So that's you experiencing your own consciousness. It's a beautiful place to be. And once you get there, it's really hard to go back. It's almost like a backwards valve, is how I would put it. This state of presence becomes more and more powerful the more that we are willing to sit in it, to be it. I still feel that state of Zen that I felt as the days went on at the retreat. And I want to share this as well, that I realized I had the privilege to be able to attend. I have the resources to be able to pay for the ticket to go there. That doesn't make me better than anybody else. The reason I'm sharing this is not to put myself on any sort of pedestal. It is simply to speak from a place of presence, of awareness, and of oneness. I truly believe with all of my heart, I have faith. I feel it. That oneness is that feeling that so many of us are desiring. It's so hard to get to. But like Eckhart says, just like a virus can infect others, presence can also be transmitted to others. So I invite you to practice this presence. Sit in nature, look at the trees. Don't add any thoughts to it. Don't label it. Just be it. Just experience it. The more you practice this, the more that you do this, the more presence you bring to all areas of your life. You don't always have to know what to say. Allow the words to flow through you. I had no idea what I was going to say on this podcast today. I did have some notes, so I did have some help. But I wanted to practice. I wanted to practice what Eckhart was teaching. Bold awareness, bold presence, being here in the here and now. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope that you found some of these thoughts helpful as you continue your own journey of expanding your consciousness. Until next time.